Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we are spilling some tea.
Yep, well, we're going to debunk all the BS that we see in the fitness industry that, in all honesty, pisses us off sometimes because I just feel like we work really hard to do good in this industry, but there are people and things that are highly marketed and highly palatable to people, and it just creates unrealistic expectations and causes drama and ruins things for people. So
Yes, and I think what you said is I think what happens is, and we've had clients that come to us with certain experiences with fitness coaches specifically, and it really just drives us crazy because we are so dedicated to actually helping that it just makes us really upset, especially because we get clients that are more likely to be hesitant to invest in a coach. So this is kind of, I guess, all the things that kind of grind our gears.
yeah. So I mean, we've got a long list here, but I do kind of want to go off script a little bit because I think, one of the things that made me look at this podcast idea and actually be like, I want to do that this week, because I think these ideas have been on our outlines lists for a year. Literally we came up with this so long ago, but we're just now talking about it, was because we had an actual situation where this actually happened to Aaron. And so obviously very close to me. So if it's all right with you, I would love to just kick off with this experience and rant a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to say, I think that this topic is super fitting, even though we've had it on our to-do list for a year, just with everything recently going on with Brittany Dawn Fitness. And if you were like, who the heck is that? Well, she was someone who was very, very big in the fitness industry. She's had a come to Jesus moment. She's like a Jesus, God person. That's
A
like
Christian?
her new, well, that's her. No. That's like her new niche. That's like her new thing. So no, not just like, oh, she's religious now. No,
I was
that's like
are
her
you
new.
struggling to find the word for Christian?
No, that's just like her new niche. But if you're like an OG fitness person and you have been in the game since 2015, 16, 17, she got busted for scamming and she's now currently being sued years later for millions. So again, that's why I think this and what recently happened with you and Aaron, I think is just so fitting and why we kind of wanted to do this today.
Yeah. So the day that we're recording this, I told this story on my Instagram story yesterday, but obviously we have probably a different and mixed audience here. So basically, I'm not here to smear names. I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus. So I'm going to just keep them nameless. But what happened was back in September, and this was when Aaron had just started working with me at PCC, and he was also like, well, now I'm a coach. I should probably hire my first coach, because he had never actually officially hired a coach before. I had just helped him with the fitness and macros and stuff. So he saw some people that he followed post for the first time about offering online coaching, and they're a very prominent company within their niche. And so it's in-person training for athletes, and he had run one of their programs before and had seen some good results, one of those, you buy it once and just kind of go through it yourself type of thing. So he had done that. So he had built some trust with them there, and they're really well known for training people in person at their brick and mortar location. And then they posted on their Instagram story saying hey, we're doing a little bit of online coaching. If you're interested, DM us. So he was like, hey, this is my sign. I'm going to reach out. I think that this is a good fit for me, since I want to not only be strong and look better, but also be an athlete, train like an athlete. So we kind of went through the whole sales process with them, and everything seemed pretty legit. It looked pretty good. They had a good sales page on their website. They ran through the whole discovery call progression pretty standard, in a standard way. And the pricing was pretty much what we thought it would be. And we felt pretty good about it. And basically where I was at was hey, if you feel good about this and this is what you want, like we can absolutely invest in this, because, you know, investing in ourselves is one of the best things we could do. But unfortunately, this went sideways. But the first month or two was pretty okay. Like we were like just now bringing Aaron into the business, so he was coming into his own as a coach too. So I think as he developed as a coach, his expectations for coaches in general were also developing. So as that was happening, like the first couple of months ran through fine. Like he did the programming, he had all his updates, and like they were basically, they didn't have a formal check-in process. It was very weird. They had a Google sheet, and it was basically like you just fill in your Google sheet as you go, and then once a week they go check the Google sheet, and if it's filled in, they will make updates. But there's no like, here's your check-in day, or like here's like a form to fill out or anything. So it was very weird. Like there was
That's so weird.
yeah, there was like no prompting to have a check-in or like formal touch points, but they were just like, yeah, text us anytime and call us anytime. And it was kind of like no boundaries, but to the point where it's like, well, I don't even want to reach out then. So it's kind of not well defined there, but it was like, you know, I could look past that because it was like the programming's probably good. And it seemed like things were going well the first couple months, but then the holidays came around, and then the just the holidays, and then we traveled at the beginning of January, and then on the way back from our trip to Arizona, we got sick. Aaron got really sick for like 2 weeks, was pretty much on his ass for like a good like 7 or 8 days, and the whole, obviously, nutrition fitness went out the window for that, because he was just trying to like survive, get in as many fluids as possible, like what we advise when you're sick. And then we were like, okay, you're better now. Things are, you know, back to normal. We're back in our routine. Time to get back on track. He checked his like sheet, he checked his texts, and he realized that the last time they had contacted him was over a month ago. It was a month and 4 days, which is freaking just insane. So we were already kind of like, like we don't really love like the whole Google Sheets. We don't really love the whole no check-in process, like weird levels of contact. But we were like, we'll just stick it through. Like it's still programming. It's still like, it's decent. But then it was just they literally did not reach out to him for over a month. Like, did you just forget that he existed? Like, what the actual fuck? So I was really, really pissed, because it was just like, that is unacceptable from a coaching standpoint. I mean, you know this, like we operate the same way. We don't go more than a week without talking to every single client, and most of the time we talk to them more often. So I'm just sitting here like, how do you let that go for 34 fucking days? So pardon my French, but there's like very few things that make me angry, but one of them is disrespecting people close to me, and that was very disrespectful. Now it gets worse. We reached out and we said, hey, well, he emailed, but I say we, I don't know, but he reached out, emailed them, and was like, hey, I don't think this is going to be a really good fit anymore. It just seems like as we've progressed through this, what was promised has not been followed through on. For example, like a high touch service, being able to talk like often, being able to have those updates, being able to be reached out to when you fall off track. Like those are things that coaches should be held to a standard for. If someone falls off track, usually they're not going to come running back to the coach saying, I fell off track. They're going to hide and like go hermit in a corner because they feel ashamed. So it's the coach's responsibility to reach out. Yes, it's a two-way street, but that's what people are paying us to do, right? And so for them to not have reached out when he fell off track completely for like a month, like, so anyways, we expressed the fact that it just wasn't matching up with what was promised, asked for a prorated refund for what we had paid, because we paid it all up front. And because there's like a discount with that. And I actually put this on my Instagram story. I was like, do you guys think that's fair to ask for a prorated refund? And it was like so many more people than normally interact on my polls voted, yes, absolutely. That is totally fair. And they basically responded, the head guy there responded to that email very, very, very defensively, just did not take any responsibility over our disappointment with the service we were receiving was really just like, we expected you to just follow through on the program. You should have reached out to us. What do you mean there was no check-in process? We update the sheet when we go in and check it, but it's like, yeah, but for a month there was nothing updated. Did you just like not think to reach out? Like, so things like that, just like being very defensive. And that's what pissed me off the most, because as a coach, I have in the past been approached with like dissatisfied customers. And I'm sure like that this might have happened for you too, Christina, but like the way that I approach that is, oh my God, how can I help? Like, let me, like, tell me what is wrong and I will make it better. And that is like the opposite of how they handled that customer service issue. So I was just very turned off. And then they were like, no, we don't do refunds. We sent you the terms of service and we don't do refunds like it says. We didn't sign a contract.
The terms of say you didn't sign anything. So where are the terms?
Sent the money and they sent the terms of service after, but no signatures were required. So we literally didn't agree to anything.
I was going to say, if that's sent afterwards, that's not, and that's only in regards to payment, right?
I didn't read the terms of service, to be honest. And it like, apparently it says it on there, but like, it's just the fact that like, there was no signature, like you have to sign something to agree to that. So anyways, it was a whole thing, but I'm really not torn up about getting the refund. Like
it's the principle.
It is. Yeah. It's the principle of like, they did not take responsibility over their service. That was shitty compared to our expectations and what they had promised. And even if that's not what they technically meant to promise, expectations were set. And the issue comes with these types of like things is, even if there's a disconnect between what was promised, what was expected, that should be discussed over the phone of like, hey, why is there a difference here? And like, maybe even getting to the point where it's like, okay, we agree to disagree that like, these are the expectations. This is what we promised. But like, at the end of the day, the service provider needs to take responsibility and say, I'm sorry that I made you believe this. And like that is on me for not portraying that appropriately, I guess. So, there's a lot of different ways that could have been handled better. But anyways, that is my pet peeve about the fitness industry is coaches that don't take responsibility. And I hear about this all the time, like literally every other person that I hear talking about a past coach that they've had is the coach blames the client. The coach turns it on the client. If you come to someone with a piece of constructive criticism and immediately they tell you it was your fault, that is gaslighting and that is not okay. And it is clearly a sign of insecurity and just like, yeah. So it happens a lot.
I was biting my tongue. There's so many points I wanted to make, but I knew you needed to get it all out again. But there are so many red flags, like the whole not signing a contract, not having clear expectations, and having clear expectations that you can reference, like readily reference and go back to, having some sort of like, we have our protocol packet where it's like everything is laid out, and like the no structure for check-ins is really odd to me, because it's like, how do you organize if you've got a roster of 20, 30, 40, 50 people? How is that?
Like go searching through Google Sheets? Like, what do you do?
I don't know. Or just let me see if this is updated. Like, so that's awful.
Yeah.
But I can somewhat sympathize with the idea of like your clients need to be held accountable and they need to be the ones checking in. But even as a coach, like, even if it's just weekly, like, hey, everything going okay? Like, haven't seen a check-in. Yeah. It takes literally 2 seconds.
A 5-second text takes like no time. Yeah. You know what you said though, that actually stood out to me as a really positive thing. I actually signed up a client last week who, after our conversation before like we hopped off the call, she was like, hey, like this contract looks good and all that, like that's fine, but like I would really like to see like an actual like physical list of like the deliverables on the contract. And I was like, wow, I've never had anyone ask that before. That's really cool. because like she wants to know that she's signing like what she's being promised, and she worked in policy, so like I get why. But I like had to actually write up like an addendum, because I was like, well, we don't have that because everything we do is technically custom, so like it can vary, so it's not on our generic contract. But I wrote that up for her because I was like, good for you. Like,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're asking for this, because I'm happy to provide that too. And I could definitely imagine if she were in a conversation with another coach, that conversation could have been a total deal breaker.
Right. Yeah. No, and I really like that, because I think, and this is something that we recently did with we had a 90-day fat loss accelerator program. And one of the first things we did is, instead of going like, oh, here are your macros, here's the workouts, it's like, hey, here's like the introduction, right? Like, here is the expectations that we have for you, and here are the expectations that you can have from us. And so I think that that was really important. And I just really like setting those clear expectations, because if you don't set those in the beginning, like, there's a very easy chance that there's going to be some sort of miscommunication, or you don't have anything to reference and say, well, you're not fulfilling your end. But when it comes to, Aaron finally getting to that point where he is unsatisfied and sends that email, like you were saying, like, instead of them taking personal responsibility and saying, hey, Aaron, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, what can we do to make your experience better? They chose to get defensive, and Aaron's never going to work with them again. And if anyone asks, he's going to say, hell no, like fuck no, don't work with them. However, had they been like, wow, these are some really great points, we can use these moving forward, hey, let's throw in an extra couple months for you to get you back on track, like, let's find a way to make this work, and then he ends up having a great experience, well, then Aaron might just be like, he might make a couple referrals and they might make some more money off of him. So they lost a really big opportunity right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, just again, like, constructive criticism is a learning opportunity, how to get better. Like, I welcome that. I'm sure you do too. And like, that's something I like about our friendship in particular, because like, we are just so like, give me feedback, be blunt about it. Like, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to be better. And we like welcome that from each other. And I think people have such a hard time with accepting constructive feedback, that it like, because it's such a, it's such a punch to the ego or whatever, but it's just an opportunity to be better. So like, when I see that in people who are credentialed individuals with a lot of knowledge, acting that way, it really makes me sad and disappointed about how a lot of client relations are being handled in the industry. And it doesn't surprise me when there's resistance for people like wanting to sign up with a coach, with us, with you, because not all experiences are going to be great, welcoming, and ones that inspire constructive criticism and dialogue. So yeah, so that's one piece of one cup of tea to spill, I guess.
Yeah. So coaching services is something we're going to touch on later, but now that it is very open, we can kind of touch about the Brittany Dawn situation. Sorry, my dog just shook. But so again, she was really big back in the day, and her big thing was custom nutrition, and she was a ED warrior. That's what she kind of described herself as. She talked a lot about her eating disorder. And so a lot of people with eating disorders reached out to her because that's kind of how she marketed herself. And she would throw everyone on the very same program. So everyone was getting this quote unquote like custom service, and it was not custom. Everyone kind of got the same plan. Like people, I mean, because she was really, really popular. So people would touch base. They would kind of, I guess they were on her team. And so they'd reach out and make connections. And then everyone was like, wait, I'm doing that. Like, I'm doing that too. Or like, your calories are the same as mine. And she was just sending out these cookie cutter kind of meal plan programs and not doing any real check-ins. And I have this is not just hearsay. Like, I have a client who, when I was a personal trainer, and I was doing in-person coaching, and one of my clients wanted nutrition plans, nutrition information. And I said, hey, I'm actually not qualified to handle your nutrition. And at the time I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I probably had the knowledge, and I mean, looking back, I could have done a much better job, but I just didn't, I felt like it was outside of my scope of practice. So I said, you can like do something else. So she actually reached out to Brittany Dawn. So I have firsthand knowledge, and I've seen the emails, I've seen the quote unquote, again, check-ins that she would receive. And it was just like, hey, good job. No plan, like no changes. And it was like, no, there was nothing else. Nothing else. It was just like, keep going, girl. You got this. And I think that she never answered any questions. She never adjusted anything the entire time. And the only time she ever answered any sort of questions was if it had to do with supplements and she could pitch her code for. So yeah, so she, and then I guess the other thing that she got in trouble for was, again, a lot of these people with eating disorders would reach out and say, hey, Brittany, like, I'm concerned. I'm like scared of gaining weight, or I don't, and she'd throw them on like 1,200 calories. So eventually she got busted, I guess in 2000, I think it was 2019, where like everything kind of came to light. She was all over the news. And then again, she had her come to Jesus moment and made her shift. And it's been years, but now she's getting sued. Like she's getting sued for, I think it's, I would assume malpractice or just like false advertising. And it was this big thing where people were reaching out for refunds, and she was having them sign a non-disclosure agreement and then was only giving like half of the refunds back. I don't know. It's this big to do, but I mean, basically it's just be careful who you reach out to. And I think it's really important. And we've talked about this before, kind of how we run our services and our coaching is, if someone wants to work with us, we don't just sign them up. We don't have a landing page where they can pay for a program and they just start getting macros all of a sudden. Like we talk with them, we spend, 45 minutes on the phone, making sure they're a good fit. And if they're not, we will turn them down. And a lot of coaches say that, but we actually will turn people down if we think they're not a good fit for the team, they're not right for the culture, or we think that we can't help them. And a lot of coaches don't do that. So, I mean, I don't know. There's so much that we could say about that, but just be really careful. So it's, I think the other thing too, is if you reach out to a coach, it's okay if you ask for like, hey, can I talk to a few of your former or like current clients? Like, yeah, that's totally fine. And we encourage you to do that because I mean, again, that's just another way to make sure that you're making an informed decision and that this is the right thing for you.
Yeah. Honestly, I've only had like 2 people ask me to do that. And the good thing is that like when they do, it's very reassuring and like they feel like, okay, like I'm going to do this because like all of this goodwill. And I mean, a lot of our business comes from word of mouth, which just like makes that process easier. But like, yeah, it's literally like, if they had those people who were signing up with Brittany Dawn had talked to people, in the program or whatever, like I would be so sure that a lot of this wouldn't have happened if they actually took the time. But I mean, that's the thing about these types of quote unquote coaching services. Like they want to sign people up, make a bunch of money. And I feel like that she had been doing that since like 2013. And like
she'd been doing it a long time.
Yeah, it's crazy. But there's a lot of like pet peeves and shit that goes on with coaching companies, coaching teams. And unfortunately, when something is more and more popular on social media, it has good and bad sides that come to that. There are obviously good coaches in this industry and great coaches in this industry and really great businesses that are just, all about integrity. But there's also coaching services that just want to be as big as possible, just want to have as many coaches or as many clients as possible. So those are the things to look out for. And in all honesty, there are only really a few ways to suss that out. One of those is going to be just like being able to do your research, talk to the people on the team, in the team, and about like former and current clients' experiences. But also, and this is not an always, but price, a lot of times if something is just really cheap, there's a high chance that they're just handing out a lot of the same stuff to everybody, or they're just kind of going for volume, right? And so really the whole you get what you pay for type of thing, especially with like, I think this happens a lot with like local bodybuilding coaches and like local coaches, where they'll have like templated meal plans, which by the way is illegal for personal trainers to give. But they'll like give templated meal plans out and it'll just be like $100 a month and you just kind of text them here and there. But like that is obviously not custom. But that happens a lot, like on, I think, the local level.
I was trying to find a post that I had just recently put out on Instagram, because it was red flags within like what to look out for with coaches and kind of like the what you can expect from a coach. Because I think what happens is sometimes when people start off with a coach who is either scammy or has some very questionable kind of policies, they don't know any better, that they've never worked with a coach before. So they don't know what is considered standard, or what's super creepy. And I had a bunch of examples and I really wanted to pull it up because this happened, oh gosh, I don't remember how many months ago, but a very, very big coach kind of like came to light that they had been doing some really, really bad stuff.
Oh, I know what post you're talking about. That was a good bit ago, I feel like.
I think so too. I think it was actually right before or right after the Olympia.
That makes sense.
I think because all of that came out right after, I think.
Yeah. And like, wasn't it like asking like his clients for like naked check-in photos and that sort of thing?
Yes. Yeah. So that is no, never, ever, ever, ever.
Don't
If
ever do
they're
it.
telling you to like bend over backwards to like see more of your glute hand, like whatever it is, like there should be nothing sexual about your photos. Like there should be no naked photos, no topless photos, or like them asking you to wear more revealing clothing. Like if you're in contest prep, like you should be 100% fine in your competition suit and you shouldn't have to do anything less or anything that makes you uncomfortable. So I think that's really, really important. No naked ever. Please, please don't do that.
Yeah. And I think for lifestyle, like there's a line where like in some circumstances, if someone sends check-in photos in like a t-shirt and like biker shorts, I'll be like, I can't really see what's going on here. Like this is like, I actually can't. But again, like I have had clients where they say like, that is all I'm comfortable sending. And that is all I'm comfortable taking a photo in. And that might be what we have to work with for the time being. And over time, you might be able to see some of those changes come through. Like if it's like tight fitting t-shirt and shorts, like that's obviously going to get looser over time if that person has a lot of weight to lose. But for certain situations, I think there's definitely like, okay, more revealing clothing as in like, we should probably be in a bathing suit or like a sports bra, and like shorts or underwear is like very appropriate for check-in photos. That's pretty normal. Just if you're listening to this, you have no idea. That's the standard. But like, you don't have to bend over backwards. You don't have to like, do weird poses or positions. Like it should just be front, side, back, relaxed. If you're a competitor, like your front pose, your back pose. And obviously those alone are fairly revealing, but that's just the nature of the sport. But like, that's really as far as it needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there are times where with certain clients, it's like, if they're just covering up, well, we can't see anything. So I definitely understand in that sense where it's like, but it should be a conversation, and it should be, hey, I'm not telling you what you should do, but it's like making it difficult. So can we find like maybe a middle ground where you find something that you're more comfortable in and I can still do my job?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was actually in the summertime. That's where it was, like around the August timeframe. So I will definitely find that post because there are so many different things that people don't, I guess, realize. Shoot, I'm not gonna be able to find it, but if I do, I'll let you know.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like, again, a coach was busted for being really inappropriate, just taking advantage of his clients. And a lot of like one woman came out to talk about it, and then everybody else came out of the cracks in the woodwork to bust him for it. Right. That was pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. And there was another thing where he was basically soliciting his clients for extracurricular activities,
Oh,
and like hitting on them. And so again, a coach should never make you uncomfortable in the sense that if they're saying like, oh, you're so beautiful or you're so sexy, or like that's huge red flags. Like they should be commenting on your physique. That's different, but it should be like, oh, you're looking leaner. I see some lines here, things like that.
yeah, definitely. And like even as a female coach with mainly female clients and like, you know, rarely doing contest prep, I've still like personally felt uncomfortable in situations where I'm like, I need to point out progress on this person's body, but like I also don't want to just be like pointing at their body and like making comments about it. So like for me to feel like almost uncomfortable like giving those types of feedback, and then like for someone to just totally be like busting over that line and like completely obliterating that boundary is like mind blowing to me, because I'm literally like, I'm sitting here like uncomfortable, like asking a client to like maybe be in a sports bra. And here are people who are literally just like taking full advantage of the nature of this business.
Yeah.
It's
And
awful.
I think that's a really good point that you make is like as coaches, it's our job to create like a safe and welcoming environment for our clients because they are entrusting us with their body and their health. And so clients put themselves in extremely vulnerable situations with their coach, and they're telling them things that they might not tell other people. And so it's really important that coaches uphold this high level of coaching services and this high standard. And like, and I think it translates a lot to like high personal standards. So I found the post. So like no coach, male or female, should ever touch you in any sexual manner. So if you're doing like in-person coaching or anything like that, and there are times where people have traveled to go meet their coach in person, like they should, I feel like, ask permission. Like, hey, is it okay if I like move you to like, if they're showing you posing or like, if you're, can I show you something? But it should be permission driven.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, ask you not to send nude or skimpy or like bent over photos, ask you to take all of your clothes off for a fat check if you're in person, send you nude photos of themselves, like use their position of power or status in the industry against you or try to take advantage of you. So I've seen that too with like very high powered coaches will say like, I'll blacklist you from whatever. Try to sleep with you or sleep with any of their clients, flirt with you, sending inappropriate comments, make demeaning comments to you or about other people. I think that's really big too. And I have a story about that. Force you to do something you're not comfortable with, or try to normalize any of the above behaviors. So all of those are red flags.
Big
And
red flags. What's your story?
well, I was going to say, if you feel like there's a situation with your coach that makes you uncomfortable, instead of internalizing it, reach out to someone and ask like, hey, is this normal? Or like, would this make you uncomfortable? And I really, really highly encourage you to reach out and just talk to someone and either have someone put your mind at ease or be able to get out and remove yourself from a situation that is possibly in the point of like escalating, to like kind of save yourself now.
Yeah. What was your story though?
So my story is, and again, I only know one side, right? Like I haven't talked to the other individual, so I always want to preface that. But this client was working, we were teammates, and she had worked with another coach previously who's, again, very, very, very well known. And she had a binging episode during prep. So she was on contest prep, she binged, and first thing she did was she let her coach know, which is 100% the absolute right thing to do, is to let them know, not lie about it, not try to cover it up. She went to her coach and he got on the phone with her and screamed at her about how she wasn't taking this seriously. She was going to ruin all of her progress. And then he told her to go to the gym and do cardio and to not stop, like do as much cardio as she could do, and to not eat that day.
Oh God.
Yeah. So not only did he shame her and do all these things, but that was his solution for her binging problem or for
Literally the
her
worst
binge.
nightmare.
Right, right. Rather than like, all right, let's sit and figure out what might have caused this trigger. Like, do you need some additional help? Like, here's some resources. Like, let's figure that out, or like dive more into, I don't know, like what the binging episode kind of like looked like and all those things. But no, yeah, do as much cardio as possible. Don't stop and don't eat. And then again, he was just like, the rest of the prep was kind of like tainted because he just felt like she wasn't like worth it to him as a client.
Yeah, that's awful. And like,
Yeah.
it's just the sad reality is like that sort of thing continues to happen in this industry. And it's like, we sit here, like when we, like when I give someone grace for like a mistake, like maybe they messed up, they overate over the weekend, they come back and they tell me, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so scared to tell you this. And I'm just like, hey, it's a learning experience. Like, thank you for telling me. Like, what can we learn from this? And like, that's the conversation that we have. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I told you this. Like, I had no idea. Like, I was so scared. Like, I just cannot believe that, like, when I'm sitting in that position, I'm like, wow, I can't believe like that was the response. But like now knowing that all of this stuff kind of goes on, I'm just like, well, of course, like people literally have had their worst nightmares come true. And here I am like being nice about it and like trying to figure out an actual solution. That shouldn't be the anomaly, but unfortunately sometimes it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll have the same situation where I'll have clients, tell me about messing up or whatever. And my first initial reaction is, thank you for telling me. Like, thank you for feeling like you can open up and let me know what's going on. Because like, and they'll say, they're like, I was scared my previous coach or my last coach like yelled at me or made me feel bad, or like, said I didn't want it bad enough. And it's like, I think the other thing to recognize is like, Marissa, like you and I are like humans too. Like we mess up, like we're not perfect. And I think it's unfair to hold clients to this super unrealistic standard, especially lifestyle clients.
Yeah, especially when we are fitness professionals, like we live and breathe this lifestyle and we mess up too. Like, what the heck do we expect our lifestyle clients? Like, lifestyle clients are literally people who hire us because they don't enjoy exercising or eating healthy enough to do it themselves. That is literally what this is. So, like, how the heck are we supposed to hold them to that standard? I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So
I
I
do
guess
want to move into the unrealistic transformations.
yes, I was just going to pivot there too. So,
Cool.
transformations are tricky. They are kind of tricky. And I had someone not call me out, but made a really good point. And I realized I just didn't do this. I posted a client transformation today on my Instagram page. And I did the exact same thing I just did without thinking. But I did one, and she messaged, or she commented, she's like, can you please post the timeline, like the time frame for this
Oh yeah.
transformation? And I was like, that's a really good point. I was like, I just wasn't thinking about that as like a coach's perspective. I was trying to share the client's story. And I was like, but that's a really good point, because a lot of people will show these before and afters and will completely fabricate on the time that it took a client to achieve those photos. Some coaches, and I've seen this, it's so bad. Some coaches and even programs will literally steal transformation photos and post them as their own.
Oh God.
So, yeah, like I've seen it, because I've seen the people who will literally post and they're like, this is not like, this is me. They're using my transformation to promote their service. And that like, I don't know who they are. And it's like, I had clients send this in to me and say, hey, is that you? Like, did you do this? And they're like, no.
Oh
So
my God.
people will steal before and afters. The timeline will be like, oh, the client did this in 30 days. And in reality, it could be like 6 months or like a year. And so people have these unrealistic expectations of how quickly they can make change, or they get dissatisfied if they're not making change quickly enough. So that really drives me crazy. And then on top of it, coaches will literally alter the before and afters. So they will go into Photoshop and they will make clients bigger and their before photos and make them smaller or more muscular in their after photos, which is mind blowing to me. So there's just so much to kind of, which is really hard, because as a consumer and you're looking at these transformations, like how do you know? How do you know if, like, unless the client is tagged and you can actually reach out to that client and talk to them. But other than that, like, it's really hard to say, well, is this fake? Is this real? Like, how do they know?
Yeah. Transformations are tricky because obviously, like, if they're real, like, it's providing great credibility of like, hey, like, this program does work. These coaches know what they're doing. I actually was writing one today for a client of mine who I'll kind of briefly tell the story, but she has basically been losing and gaining the same 80 to 100 pounds for decades. Decades, and over has done the quick fix, the quick fix, the quick fix. Finally, this time around, she has been using macros and she has been trying to more make it a lifestyle. And so I was writing this today and I was almost writing it. And now that I think about it, I was like in my head saying to myself, this isn't impressive enough to post. Like, she's lost 90 pounds so far, which is freaking amazing from her starting point. But I could only take credit for 25 of those. So I thought it wasn't good enough, right? I wanted to say she lost 90 pounds with me. And like, because that is the, that's like the catchphrase, right? Or the hook that brings people in. Oh my God, like, that's so cool.
Pounds.
Right. And then it's like over the course of 3 years. And like, this is actually something that she feels insecure about, because she's like, it's just so slow. Like, I feel like I should be farther along at this point. And then as the coach, I'm like, oh my God, like, can I even post? Yes, I absolutely can post this. When I really thought about it and I kept writing, I was like, no, I am going to post this because it's freaking amazing. And even though in the last 9 months, we've lost 25 pounds, you know what else we've done? She's gone on multiple vacations. She's done an entire month of maintenance practice, and she's had every single weekend to be flexible and have wine night on Sunday. And that is sustainable progress. And while it's not sexy, like, I still can take credit for sustainably losing 25 pounds, doing it the right way, and actually helping her change her mindset. Because now, instead of thinking, maybe I'm just helpless, maybe I'll just be losing and gaining these same 80 to 100 pounds over and over again for the rest of my life, she actually feels like she has a shot of this being the last time. And that is not something that she could have said before. And so that's what I wrote about. But like, it actually took me a second to sit there and be like, Marissa, look at what you're comparing yourself to. And I actually saw a post. I tried to pull it up, but it was actually timed out. It was an Instagram story from our mentor, Jordan. And he posted a screenshot of like a news article that was like, lose 50 pounds in 28 days, like, new diet strategy, blah, blah, blah.
Oh yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah. And he was basically like, us as coaches, like, we're scared to post like, oh my God, lose 10 to 15 pounds in 90 days. Cause like, that seems too unrealistic. Right. But this is what we're competing with. We're competing with lose 50 pounds in 28 days. Like, what the actual fuck? And so when I think about like, when people's expectations, when they look at these transformations, that's what I'm comparing myself to, right? Like, do these transformations measure up with those expectations? Because that's how I need to market and like get more clients. And that's the trap that coaches fall into. And so like, here Christina and I are trying to like check ourselves and like be realistic and tell the real story, right? And we are even like victim to falling into that mindset sometimes because we want our businesses to grow. But it's like, we really think about like, this is what we're competing with. Like, oh Jesus, like, we definitely are just taking the high road here, and maybe it's not going to make us blow up as quickly with our clientele or, our business. But I just thought that was like a crazy comparison, because like, just that is ridiculous. So if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. And so we have a whole other segment that we want to touch on with marketing, but I think that these go hand in hand because that's how people advertise for their coaching services. So again, because we're the same for everything, I had the exact same scenario with a client who she lost 5 pounds with me over the course of 6 months. But it's like, it's hard to say like, oh, lose 5 pounds in 6 months. And someone's like, are you kidding me? A pound a month? Like, but it's all the things that you can't see. Like it is the mental transformation that she had, the whole, well, now I don't feel like I have to do this extreme dieting throughout the week and then binge on the weekends and start over again on Monday and have this be this cycle that just makes her feel awful about herself and what she's doing with her nutrition, and then feeling like she's restricting calories and is not losing weight and doesn't understand why. And we were able to take her and reverse diet and work her calories all the way up from like 1,500 calories to almost 2,000, maintain her weight and actually improve her body composition, and then start a diet. And then she was able to diet down, and she lost 5 pounds eating more than she did when she started with me. So she had all of the mental transformations. She had a huge physical transformation, but it's like, well, it's only 5 pounds. So it's hard when, again, as coaches, we're like, it's not sexy enough to sell that or to talk about. But again, I think it's like, hey, this is realistic. Like, this is what we can do. This is what you get with working with a coach. It's not just, well, I lost 5 pounds, or maybe if she had lost 15, but then if she ends the program and that's like, well, now what? Now what do I do?
Goes
like,
back to those same toxic
right,
patterns, like,
right. And gains it back. And then it's like, so I think that we talk about the actual after, because you see these transformation photos and like maybe they're like incredibly sexy, but then the after is, well, now they're on like 1,000 calories. They're doing tons of cardio and they don't know how to maintain their progress. And once they stop working with a coach doesn't care about them. They're like, see you later. I got my testimonial, my transformation, like whatever. Well, now they don't know what to do. They don't know how to live a balanced lifestyle. They don't know how to go out to dinner. They don't know how to not do 2 hours of cardio to maintain. So they're stuck at this like 1,000 calorie situation. And now they're in a position where they're going to very easily gain fat back and probably put themselves into a worse position than when they started with the coach. So that's why I think you and I, we have the same principles. Like, we are all about permanent and sustainable change. Like, we want you to be able to maintain your results, live a life, and not feel like you have to do hours of cardio or, lick an apple for your meal for the day and like all these things.
yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that you can do, I know we were talking about like the whole like before and after altering and stuff. Like, one thing that you can look for that like might help a little bit with vetting some of them out is, one thing that I try to do when I'm creating before and after photos is I try to match the like size of the person's like head, or like where the photo cuts off. Like, so if the photo cuts off right below their knees on the before, I'm going to try to blow it up so that it cuts off just below their knees on the after. And a lot of times, like, if you don't just like scale the photo appropriately, it can actually like make a really big visual difference. Like, wow, they look so much leaner. It's like, oh wait, if I just zoom in, like they look the same. Like, so that's something that, like, honestly, for some clients, I don't like to have to do that because it looks better when I leave it the size that the photo was originally. But just in the spirit of honesty, like, and continuing to tell the real story. And I think that's one thing that you can use as a tool to vet out when you're looking for reliable and trustworthy coaches, is who's telling the unsexy stuff, who's talking about the person that only lost 5 pounds but transformed their mindset. Those are the kinds of things you do want to look for. And it goes way beyond Christina and I. There's a lot of coaches, great coaches out there that do that. But that's the stuff to look for. And when you look at transformations and you see stuff that it does feel too good to be true, like, wow, all these people lost over 50 pounds and kept it off, like, maybe go look at their profiles and message them and ask them how they're really doing. If you do feel like there are promises being made that are too big. And then, just to add on to that, when I say too big, that's very hard to define, because again, 50 pounds in 28 days is a claim that was made on the news. So yeah. So again, going back to evidence-based principles, 1% of body weight per week is the max amount that is recommended safe and healthy. So that would be 2 pounds a week if you're 200 pounds, 1 pound a week if you're 100 pounds, etc. So kind of keep that as a reference point.
Yeah. And we have a lot of so I think that brings us perfectly into marketing, because I feel like they go hand in hand, kind of talking about transformations. And I think as coaches, like Marissa was saying, we want to err kind of on the side of caution and not make these like huge claims, but also how I guess, viewed by our peers too is something that we consider. So a lot of times we'll post these like super scientific like things because, and it's not from the standpoint of like, look how much I know, but we're like, that's what we want to do. We want to educate our followers and we want to provide value. And so we want to, talk about certain things. And it's difficult to always be talking about nutrition or like I don't know, drinking your water or like things that are like seem kind of boring or like talking about being toned, like, oh, tone up, because as most fitness professionals we're like, well, tone's not a thing, and you don't want to do that because that's the language that our clients bring to us and talk about. And so I think it's a fine line between like, I don't know, like there are certain people who will do like, oh, fat blasting workout or burn your inner thighs or love handles or the whole like hip dip thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like when that thing came out, oh, but like that's how people market, and they're trying to get you to work with them using lingo that you agree with, but is oftentimes not something that you can actually do. Like you can't target fat loss.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, are they using it as a, like almost creating a problem that you didn't know you had? Or are they using it as a scare tactic? Or are they just trying to like talk to you in a way that you understand? Because if I were to say, let's all build a lot of muscle so that we can get leaner, most women would be like, I don't want to build a lot of muscle. See ya. Like that is just the reality of it. And so like sometimes I will literally go against every bone in my body and say, if you want to build lean muscle, which is literally the same fucking thing as muscle, all muscle is lean. But if I say, if you want to build lean muscle or boost your metabolism or lose fat or tone up, I will use those terms because that's all people know. And so I will, when I'm on calls with people, I'll be like, so what I'm hearing is you want to tone up and be stronger and feel better in your skin. And I'm just using their language to verify, like, I'm trying to figure out like, what do you actually want? Can I help you? So I think just the way that those terminologies are used is like a good tell of like how to suss it out. Like if they're using fear mongering, if they are just like telling you fix this issue about like your body that maybe you didn't even realize is an issue. For example, like I didn't know that like fine lines on a forehead were something you could like Botox away. And then like when my facial person told me like, oh yeah, I would totally get that. Like I can see fine lines are forming on your forehead. I didn't notice them until she told me. Like literally that's how they get you. And so that's like, and I'm probably not going to get Botox for a while, just so the listeners know, because I don't think I have lines.
Cannot wait to not be pregnant and to get Botox again.
But yeah, like I feel like a lot of that, and that's opening up a whole another door to like beauty standards and like just all of that whole world. But like you don't notice those things until they're pointed out to you. So like, is it really a problem, or is somebody trying to take your money by marketing that there is a problem?
Right. And that was the whole big thing with hip dips, which was like, I don't know, a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, where it's like everyone was fine. And then you start seeing this term thrown around and everyone's talking about them, everyone's addressing them. And then people who were completely fine with their body are now like, oh my God, I need to get rid of my hip dips. I'm going to buy this program, like, so I can do this. And so it's interesting, but I think, so marketing gosh, there's so many things that we could talk about, but I think that we've done a good job kind of covering everything. But the other thing too, to keep in mind, and this is like a whole other tangent, but like beauty standards change. So like, just keep that in mind. Cause like I was watching a video or something, and his mom was like scrolling through Instagram Explore page, and she was like, why do all these girls have these huge butts? And she's like, I don't get it. She was like, back in my day, like you wanted a small butt, like you got made fun of if you had a big butt. And now it's like, just like, I don't know, just like little things like that things change. But
yeah, absolutely. I think I don't want this episode to go too long, but I think one good thing to just touch on is like how to suss out real credibility versus fake credibility. And a lot of things on Instagram, people will try to blow up their own credibility. Like, you know, on the options for like, what kind of person are you on your Instagram profile? You can pick like public figure, like how people like put like, oh, I'm a public figure. I think that's so funny. But no, in all seriousness, like
Hashtag entrepreneur.
I think honestly, if you are like really trying to hire someone or look at who is credible, certifications are great. Most people who, most Fitspos on Instagram will eventually get their certified personal trainer degree, or not degree, but certification,
Degree.
and say, I am now accepting clients. That will happen a lot. That really does not say much. Just so you know, if you don't know anything about certified personal trainer exams, it's a multiple choice test that you need to get a 70% on to pass and get your certificate. So not that everybody can do it, but the barrier to entry is very, very low. And so that's not, you know, the only thing you should look for. I would look for, first of all, like experience and testimonials and like literally people saying and word of mouth that this person changed my life. Video testimonials are great for that because like you can literally see proof that like someone actually said it and like the coach didn't just like come up with it out of their ass and like post it themselves. So those are great, but like just, you know, credibility in general, I think comes through someone's overall, like the vibe you get from someone and the way they deliver information and the way that they handle a lot of the situations that we've talked about in this episode, whether that's customer relations and customer service issues, or how they market, what they talk about when they market, or, you know, any of those things, I think can all add up to an analysis of someone's credibility. So it's not really one thing, one degree, one title that someone has, but like really an overall vibe and analysis that you can derive about someone over time.
Yeah. And so I think something that you just made me think of was there are coaches who, again, market themselves as coaches, but they only highlight themselves. So it's just like shirtless picture, if they're a dude, shirtless pictures, you know, of them, of their washboard abs, or if it's girls, you know, they're, you know, big glutes and small waist or whatever it might be. And that's the focus. And it's kind of like, hey, you can, if you buy my coaching, you can look like me. And so a lot of people immediately, male or female, if they see abs, they think like, that's credible, like that's credibility. If they can do it, like I can too. But
or if they can do it, they must know what they're talking about.
Right. They must know what they're talking about. But I think that there are certain people, which I think is really interesting. I think that the most credible or is they show their like transformation, like their before and after. And granted, some people have very great genetics, but like I feel like a good example is like the glute guy, like Brett Contreras, like he helps females grow their glutes and he's a male, but he struggled to grow his own glutes. And that's where he got his, like his whole, I mean, coaching persona, like from is I need to learn everything I can about this because I have a pancake ass and I don't want that anymore. But just kind of like things like that is you know, and he highlights a lot of his clients and I mean, yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard trying to find someone who is going to work for you and is going to take your needs into consideration and actually work with you and get you the results that you want. But how people market is interesting.
Yeah, I would just say to that like you really don't know when someone posts even their own transformation. Maybe it is a more drastic one or not, but ultimately the level of effort that some people have to put into their fitness journey to make a transformation is going to vary. Some people just have great genetics. Maybe they kind of got their shit together and their body completely like just went to 0 to 100. It could happen. And there are a lot of Instagram influencers where that literally is their story. They don't have to try very hard. They just kind of work out a few times a week and they look great. And that's a lot of like quote unquote fit chicks that like people get frustrated about, I think. And so what I would say to that is while a personal transformation is some credibility for sure, because you want to see that somebody does take the lifestyle seriously and try to make changes for themselves. But at the same time, I think analysis of character, how someone presents themselves and delivers information and handles conversations just in general. And finally, like, again, having other people speak for you, because if someone is running a business and they are trying to coach others, word of mouth will spread, and it will be good or bad. It's not really like, there's never going to be like meh word of mouth, right? If word of mouth spreads, it's always going to be, this person is amazing, they changed my life, or fuck this person, don't ever work with them, this was awful. And so really trying to tap into that community is something that I would strongly recommend if you are in the business we're looking for someone to work with. But if you're not, and you're just trying to follow people that might be credible or have good information, I think that's still a good tool to use, because sometimes we just take fitness advice from people who we think look good, but ultimately there are people out there who literally don't even touch weights in their life, but they have lean, toned muscle and look amazing because of their awesome genetics. So
yeah. The other thing that people do too is they look at Instagram followers, or like following count, as another way to say whether someone is credible or not. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And I would say typically the bigger someone's account is, the less likely that you are actually speaking to that person. So if, so that is something that I've come to learn, and especially now, but even back in the day, I remember there's a very, very big fitness person. She was involved with a lot of scammy stuff back in the day too. And she like was with a very scammy company, but from working with people in the fitness industry, I was talking to someone, and she was not even an assistant coach. She was the coach for that person. So she would market herself as the coach, and then someone else would be coaching all the clients. And so they wouldn't know, because they were receiving emails without any
name. Yeah.
Right. From the name, but it was a different person. So again, Marissa and I, like, we do video check-ins with our clients. So you know that you are literally getting a check-in from us. Or again, if you're working with assistant coach, you know that you're working with an assistant coach. Like, there's no smoke and mirrors. It's like, this is what you're getting. We're telling you, and this is how it's going to be delivered. But yeah, typically the larger someone's following is, the less likely that you're actually interacting with that individual, whether it's in the DMs or through email or whatever it might be. But, and again, there are people who maybe they actually are doing that, but I'm just saying there's a likely chance of that happening. So
yeah,
please don't look at the blue check as like, oh, this person's credible and they're going to help me.
Yeah, that's probably like, you could probably gather an inverse relationship about that rather than a direct.
Right. And so I guess the other thing too, touching on these types of coaches, is people who step beyond their scope of practice. So we kind of talked about that with Brittany Dawn a little bit, but if you have someone who's marketing themselves as like, I will heal your eating disorder, or
hormones are a big one.
Yeah, hormones, I'm going to fix your gut bacteria. Like, you have to be really, really careful with who you're going to hire if you're hiring someone on Instagram. And that, again, that's not to say that if you go to someone like local in person, and like you could have an awful experience with that person too, who's a quote unquote professional. So, but you want to make sure that they actually have the credentials to be helping you in that space, and not just someone who's like, well, I did this, so therefore I can help you.
Yeah, definitely. Hormones are a big one. Registered dietitians are the only people that can give meal plans, and like, there's like specific credentials that you need for like reading labs and like being a medical doctor. Like, there are so many lines that people cross on Instagram. So just be very careful, especially when like you feel like something might be wrong. Go to a doctor and go to someone who's licensed for that. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we could go on and on, like literally all day, about a lot of these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess one last thing too, and this is difficult. I guess these kind of go hand in hand actually. So there are there are a lot of people on Instagram, specifically more so in the competitor realm, but they use PEDs. They're using anabolics, they're using like performance enhancing drugs, and they have been able to achieve their physique with some help. And again, this could be like a whole other podcast on like steroid usage, and it's not necessarily frowned upon, right? Like, if that's a decision that person chose to make, then that's, that's their personal decision. And I'm not going to say whether it's right or wrong, but it's wrong when they use it to market a transformation and say, I did this using my program, because you're leaving out quite a bit of information there. But again, that's not to say that people who don't use steroids don't also work super hard or might even work harder than us, but it's just a big thing that can lead to unrealistic standards, or someone who says, well, why don't I look like that? So I think that that's really important. Again, is more so in the competitor world, but I do understand how some people don't want to talk about it because it's illegal. Number one, like they don't want to admit
it's
that
literally against the law.
Yeah, it's against the law. So while you might think like, well, someone on Instagram should be able to talk about it. Well, there are literally very, very famous people who have gotten caught and literally gone to jail for things like that. So they don't want to announce that on Instagram. Hey, I'm doing illegal activities. Second thing is, if you have a supplement sponsor, they might not want people knowing that you also use other types of supplements. Then they're not getting the results from the actual supplements that they're taking. So it can be a conflict of interest, and it could break an agreement, or it doesn't align with other sponsorships that they have. So I do understand, but it's also frustrating when you think like, I want to look like that, and why do I not? So that's also a big pet peeve, but I also understand where they're coming from, why they might not want to release that information.
Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, it's like we scroll on Instagram, we're like, damn, like, why don't I look that way? And well, we just don't know. You just don't know people's stories. I think a big part of like takeaway from this whole conversation is you don't know what's behind the Instagram photo or the video or the caption or the story. And you're never going to be able to know unless you literally meet that person in person. And that's something that, unfortunately, that bubble has been burst for a lot of people, of like, they meet someone they met on Instagram or they knew on Instagram, and they're like, wow, this person's actually a dick. Like, and it happens really often. So just like, know that you really never know what's behind the curtain there. So just be really careful when you are trusting people with things like your money and your time on social media, because a lot of this shit does happen. And really try to just take that process slow and do your research when you are looking to invest financially, time-wise, energy-wise with yourself, your health and fitness journey, but anything you do online. I mean, lots of businesses run through Instagram nowadays, so it could be a lot of things, but just some advice from people who actually work in the industry and try to do good in it. A lot of bad can happen too, so just be wary and try to have those conversations as much as you can before taking action.
Yeah, I love that. And it again, just to wrap up, it's like, take everything with a grain of salt, and know that, like you said, sometimes things can be smoke and mirrors. You won't know until you meet people in person. And not that we want you to be like, oh shit, now I don't, I'm really scared to invest in someone, I'm going to get scammed. But like Marissa was saying, like, do your research, talk to past clients. Like, if you have a question about coaching, like, reach out to us. We're more than welcome to give you free, resources, information, and just make sure that you're put into good hands. But we don't want you to also stay in this position of doing so much research and you're scared to pull the trigger. That sometimes, I mean, Marissa and I have been burned by certain companies, certain coaches. So we've been in that position too. We understand. And sometimes you just got to say, well, it was a learning experience. And I need to trust my gut, or I need to do better next time. So unfortunately, we don't want anyone to be in that position, but sometimes that happens. But
yeah. And I think final thing is, like, if you get a gut feeling, like, trust it. Like, just trust it. If something feels weird, it feels off, maybe you can't even explain it, I would trust that gut feeling always.
Yeah. And sometimes you do need to step out of your comfort zone to do things that make you uncomfortable to grow, like investing in a coach. So again, it's trusting your gut and going with what feels right. But well, I mean, I guess that's kind of it for the tea we have right now. A little bit of a different episode from us, but we hope that you still enjoyed it. And I think it'd be really fun if you guys want to maybe comment or let us know what some of your biggest pet peeves are in the industry. So if you want to DM us or DM the Instagram page that we have for the podcast. We'd love to hear it. But if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit, and Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope to see you back next week.